Hello, everyone. It's Malvina here, and today we're talking about trauma-informed leadership. I know it's a loaded phrase, so don't worry. We'll dive into what that means and why should you care. But in order for me to bring this conversation to you, I invited a couple incredible guests. The first of my guests is Cynthia, who is the director of SHYNE, an incredible nonprofit organization, and she'll tell you more about it. And I also have Jessica Furmanek with me, who is a survivor and also a team member with SHYNE. So she'll speak from her own experience of overcoming and transcending trauma in her life.
So thank you, Malvina, for inviting me to have this rich conversation with you about trauma-informed care practices within specifically the anti-trafficking and exploitation arena that SHYNE is lucky enough to participate in. I am a survivor of complex trauma, and so I understood early on the sensitive nature of how I, as an individual, interact with the world. That means I have a heightened intuition, I'm more sensitive, I have more creativity sometimes. My brain just works a little bit differently. But what that also means is that I might have a trigger that is unexpected for even me and the person that I'm talking to. So coming to this work, I decided when I was bringing people on board to SHYNE that it was really essential for us to have conversations around the nuances of how trauma can show up in our lives and how we as coaches and providers and even friends and family members can talk with our loved ones in a caring, compassionate, and informative way. And so here at SHYNE, all of our coaches receive trauma-informed training. And at the core of what we're doing that I think looks very different in the social service sector is we've really transferred the power to the participant. They always have choice, and they are also guided through coaching as opposed to case management.
So powerful, Cynthia. Thank you for sharing your own story and what really brought you to build this incredible organization, and really shedding a little bit of light what surviving trauma looks like on everyday basis and how you're living with those specific things that show up every day and how you get to navigate that.
Malvina, that's a great lead in for when designing a program and designing SHYNE specifically within the anti-trafficking space. I still had a lot to learn. So showing up as somebody who is an avid learner and who understood that I didn't have that lived experience. And so I was going to learn a lot from the members that we were serving. And there were some key themes that came up along that initial journey that we now incorporate into our programming. So that includes privacy, number one, that we never share stories of trauma publicly. We never disclose somebody's name unless we have asked them and then re-asked them and then still given them the out. It is not required for anybody to stand up and say that I have this lived experience, that there should be choice in that. And I think there's also what I had seen a lot of and what I heard a lot of from the members that we serve was this feeling of sort of re-exploitation or transactions between organizations where they had to share or they wouldn't receive that support and service, or they had to stand up on stage and tell their stories in order to raise money for organizations, but weren't really feeling like they were feeling financially supported or that their intellectual property was protected. So SHYNE's very disruptive in the sense that we were like, okay, you need some intellectual property. Let's put a business around your ideas. Let's teach you how to negotiate those contracts and to really understand the legal ramifications if somebody approaches you and asks you to share publicly without having some of those legal practices in place. So those are kind of the things that SHYNE has done differently to ensure the safety of our membership and also to have a thriving community where we can not always be defined by our past, but on the future and where we're headed.
That was amazing, Cynthia. Thank you for sharing that. And we love Shine and we appreciate Shine so much. So, as Malvina said, I'm Jessica, and I am a survivor of exploitation. And um, like Cynthia was sharing before, I also developed CPTSD as a result of trauma. And I'm going to start out by talking about why my name and my face are being shown today. But as Cynthia was sharing, most faces and names of survivors will remain anonymous. So there are situations where, like myself, I'm a public speaker. I speak on podcasts all around the country. They get broadcast all around the world. Sometimes they get translated into other languages. I'm a published author with a wonderful publisher out of New York, and other survivor leaders often do TEDx talks. So some of us are just public figures at this point. And so you will see sometimes our face and our name because this is where we're at. But even in spite of all of that, every time that I'm asked to speak in this arena, specifically, everyone asks me, Jessica, are you comfortable sharing today for this? And Malvina and Cynthia have done that, and I've agreed. But sometimes I don't. Even with all of that public image and everybody being able to Google my name, I still sometimes say, no, I'm not going to share on that platform today because I have to choose. And so let me delve into what it looks like, why we want to require trauma-informed training when others are working together with us. So there is a cost to losing anonymity. When I work with survivors through my other organization, From Pain to Purpose, I recommend being the exception, not the norm, for survivors to have like this public sharing happening. And I'll tell you why. So when I share publicly, not only do I experience a re-traumatization each time, which can take several days to recover from in body and mind and emotion, but it also affects how the world responds to me. So what happens when I apply for a job is that they Google my name, and then all of these pages come up about my survivor experience. Now, I'm not saying they're not going to hire me. I'm just saying maybe they do and maybe they don't. So I have to have come to a place in my life where I'm willing to accept that that is the reality of losing anonymity or surrendering anonymity. It also affects dating. If you work with survivors, you'll quickly notice that most of us are not married and we don't have a partner. Some of us, but it's been my experience that most of us do not. Dating can be challenging because, let me just give you an example. So I would say 95% of the time when I meet someone and they want to ask me on a date, and they do ask me on a date, once they get to my name, which is all they have to do is friend me on Instagram to get that far, oftentimes, before I even get to my first date, most of the men have already ordered my book on Amazon. This already happened to me last week. It happens to me almost every single time. And then what they want to talk about on date one is my survivor experience. Not what I want to talk about on my date one. So it's a tough life being a public figure as a survivor. It's empowering. I won't lie. There's a lot of power in it personally and spiritually, but it's also very isolating. I may not get chosen for some jobs. I definitely don't get chosen for dating. And I'm not saying nobody does. I'm just saying that's been a lot of our experiences. And so I have to have been at a place where I fully comprehend the exchange or sacrifice that I'm choosing to make. And if I want to not make that today or tomorrow, or I want to change my mind, or sometimes what happens with organizations is we do have a survivor leader sharing publicly, but later they say, could you take my face and name down from whatever it's posted on? And that's always an option too. And that's part of being trauma informed. Malvina, does that make sense?
Absolutely. And thank you, Jessica, for bravely sharing your story and being the face of SHYNE in terms of giving us a glimpse of the women that get to be a part of this organization, that get to be supported by Cynthia and the partners you have in community. And I'm so excited that I get to be one of those partners this year, and that I too can join the ranks of those who make an impact and help your members thrive, not just survive. And, you know, I heard one word that resonated with me, Cynthia, when you shared. You said lived experiences. And as a trauma certified coach, in my practices, I often distinguish between small T trauma and big T trauma. Because sometimes when I approach a conversation of trauma, I've noticed that a lot of people just disconnect because they think it doesn't apply to them. And the truth is that the experience of trauma is subjective. Not everyone has had the experience of, sex trafficking or exploitation, or experience a loss, or be a victim of the war. But most of us have experienced some emotional trauma, which is that small T trauma. And the truth is that trauma is not just what happened to you, but it is what happens inside of you as a result of what happened. So can you share a little bit more about those lived experiences that you singled out that word and what that really means?
So thank you, Malvina, for sharing that, the big T and the small t, and how trauma really is experienced by each individual differently. And I feel like if somebody is watching this and they're maybe hearing these words for the first time, or don't identify with somebody, that that they know that it's okay, that it doesn't label them in a way that makes them less than or incapable in any way. And that's really how SHYNE has worked to shift that stigma around trauma and around lived experience. And each lived experience expert comes with their own unique set of life experiences that we here at SHYNE believe is a piece of the puzzle. And it's a big puzzle, but each of them have a piece that their own unique experience is then directly impacting that community that they connect with. And it's been beautiful to witness that variety from all different backgrounds, from all different races, from all different socioeconomic backgrounds, educational backgrounds. It's really, for me, demystified what I thought a survivor of trafficking and exploitation was. And so it's really diverse from men and women alike. And so, like, I can't lead the charge for men who've had that experience, but SHYNE is here to support that male in being the leader of his lived experience, so that he can speak to others in his community that can connect to his vision and his mission and his purpose. And that's really at the core of how we approach it, that each individual has a unique talent and gift and purpose. And I know Jessica from Pain to Purpose, that's where we really united and connected, of like, oh, we're really in the same mindset about each person being connected back to their original purpose.
Yeah, and that's what I talk a lot about in my book that all the boys read on my first date. Please, if you're watching this and you want to date me, please don't do that. Okay, so yeah, so the thing about trauma, and this is like an aside, but it's so magnificent, and since Cynthia has brought it to the table, I'll continue on. The thing about trauma is that often trauma survivors, which are all of us, almost all of us, we just don't think it because the little t gets deleted from that conversation, but those little t's add up to responses and reactions and ways of responding. So what happens a lot of time with trauma and loss is that we can't remember what we came here to do. We're just lost in how do I live each day with PTSD or what have you. And what I do at From Pain to Purpose and what we collectively do at SHYNE is, clear that away through whatever recovery programs you need, and then come to these spaces where we want to provide services and direct survivors to a space where they can remember their original gifts and talents and actually have an opportunity to act on that and build those original purposes back up. And so, Cynthia, I would love if you would share about what the scholarship fund, what programs will be provided from being a participant in the She Rises Scholarship Fund.
Absolutely, Jessica, and beautifully said. So the She Rises Scholarship Fund launched last month. Thank you, Malvina, for this partnership, and an educational fund that is specifically dedicated to the coaching and educational support that our business owners require to get to that next level. And Malvina has graciously opened up space in her coaching program, and this fund goes to support not only more access to those programs, but to the ongoing coaching and education that each of our members need. And what that looks like is on a monthly basis, we're hosting educational opportunities for our membership that is going to hit 100 this year, I'm sure, of survivor business owners. And so those educational opportunities and that coaching support is really essential for them to get to that next level for many reasons, but most importantly, that our coaches are trained to be trauma informed so that when they're fostering those relationships in entrepreneurship or in career development, wherever somebody decides to go, they're going to bump up against parts of themselves that are uncomfortable, that maybe they don't feel they're worthy enough, or they're not capable of taking on that client or that opportunity. And so they receive that support from the coach and our community and access to these educational programs we offer so that they can rise and say yes, to themselves and to their purpose. And so thank you, Malvina, again, for partnering on this fund.
That's right. And if you want to support She Rises Scholarship Fund, if this conversation is inspiring you, then just follow the link below. And we'd love to have your support. We can't do it without you. And, I really love what you said, Jessica, earlier, because when I work with entrepreneurs, leaders in a community, one of the hot topics today is conscious leadership. There was a time where emotional intelligence was like a woo-woo word. And decades ago, that became not only mainstream, but now no reputable educational institution will have a leadership program without including emotional intelligence. And what I'm also noticing in the marketplace that through the pandemic, we've seen organizations crumble, and that crumbling started oftentimes with their leadership that was so detached from the key stakeholders in a business that were employees. And we all know what trauma means because we've lived through the pandemic. So that is one experience that we all share, and it left us different than before the pandemic. So we all can connect to that. And through that gives us an access point to not only empathy, but compassion for another human being, and starting to see people's reactions in a different light. And I think that's what both of you were really bringing to the light, that oftentimes a result of trauma, whether it is the big T trauma or whether it is just a small emotional trauma we all deal with, is a trigger that will show up, where we may be defensive in a conversation, where we may, be resistant to something. And we can take something very personally because of those subconscious trauma commands and triggers that are lurking deep down. And so what, to me, the trauma-informed leadership also means is being that kind of leader that can look beyond that and can take that other next step instead of continuing that defensive conversation, for example, get curious, offer a helping hand, you know, try to understand, open up a dialogue. I'm curious from you, what would you say you'd like to see from leaders out there in terms of that trauma-informed leadership? What are some of the best practices that business leaders, community leaders can incorporate to show up with empathy, compassion, and as trauma-informed?
I am so glad that you asked, and Cynthia and I both host and or participate in very expansive trauma-informed trainings. SHYNE offers them. I do them around the country with different organizations, and you can get involved in receiving that sort of trauma-informed training. And we would love for you to do that. You can reach out to SHYNE if you want to learn more about that, or me also. But those trainings are a whole training. And there's a lot of value impact that comes into those trainings. Like, I've spent years as a subject matter expert developing those trainings. People pay a lot of money to take those trainings. So I would recommend that you sign up, honor those subject matter experts like me, other people who work through SHYNE and other organizations that offer them, sign up for them, honor those trainings, and get the full experience of what that might look like for you, for your organization, for all of that. But great question. Thank you.
Malvina, I love that, Jessica. It is so true. As a leader, and what I would like to see more in the world is honesty and transparency. I think when we try to hold it together as leaders, or we don't give our team the truth of the matter, then we are doing ourselves a disservice as leaders. And we really equipped our team members to get more leadership opportunities when we're able to be vulnerable and honest and transparent.
You used my favorite word, Cynthia, and that is authenticity. And I'm just so pleased to see that both of you are those models of authentic leadership, authentic living. Each of you chose a path where you get to vulnerably share your story, and that allows you to really make an impact in the world through teaching others how to be trauma-informed leaders, or through actually creating opportunities for other survivors to advance in their careers. And you know, we're recording this on a special day. It is Valentine's Day today, and for those of you who are listening, you may not hear it on or watch it on the Valentine's Day, but it makes me think of really the main reason why we are here together and why we're doing this. And that goes back to love. Love for each other, that compassion, that empathy. This is what every one of us is seeking. Whether we're seeking it in a workplace, to be understood, to be supported, whether we seek it in our relationships. So if we can just approach our conversations, our interactions from the place of love, I feel like that is already getting on a path of compassion, understanding, empathy, and surely it will lead us to that trauma-informed leadership as well. So thank you for modeling it so well in your organizations, and for giving me an opportunity to be a part of the SHYNE family as a partner and a coach that will help your members thrive and step into their purpose and calling, turn their pain into their wisdom, and really make the impact they were born to make in the world as well. And if this conversation inspired you, then we'd love to invite you to join the ranks with SHYNE and She Rises and support the She Rises Scholarship Fund. No donation is too small. Every single dollar matters and will change lives. Cynthia and Jessica will assure of that, and we're just so excited to bring this conversation to you. Thank you for listening.